Howdy again, everybody. This is Dr. Bryan Langlois with the Pet Pantry of Lancaster County and the current president of the Pennsylvania Veterinary Medical Association, enjoying this wonderful winter wonderland here right outside the Pet Pantry, coming to you with important tips to keep your pet safe in the cold weather, because it's not so much the snow right now that we're worried about, it's that life-threatening cold snap from the polar vortex that's going to be swooping on down through the area, affecting at least 3/4 of the country from what they're talking about. So we want to make sure that you keep your animals as safe as possible during this cold snap. And there's a couple of very easy things that you can do. The first of which, of course, if you do have one of those breeds that is shorter haired, obviously not designed for the cold, things like that, you want to make sure you take them on very short walks, 10 to 15 minutes max. If they are a short-haired, breed, or your dog just doesn't really tolerate the cold very well, definitely consider getting them a jacket or something like that on. If you have a dog that is more of the northern breeds that are a little bit more accustomed to the cold, like Malamutes or Huskies or Newfoundlands, things like that, you really want to make sure that even though they do well in the cold, that you do have shelter for them as well. And anytime you have shelter outside for your dog, you want to make sure of a couple of things. You definitely want to make sure that it is sturdy, it is protected from all of the elements, so no snow or rain or wind can get in, and it is well insulated. And one thing that everybody seems to want to do is throw blankets inside these shelters or crates or whatever. You don't want to do that, because those blankets can become very wet, and that wet will just sap the heat right out of your dog. So really, if you're looking to insulate them with something, really try to consider straw or something like that. It's a much better insulation material. And you want to see if you can also get those beds, or shelters, I should say, off the ground a little bit, so there's a little bit of an air buffer underneath, so the shelter itself is not sapping heat right into the cold ground. If you do have your dog out on a tether, remember, no longer than 30 minutes, otherwise you are violating the law. So no more than 30 minutes out on a tether, but your dog really shouldn't be out on a tether in this weather, no matter what, for more than 30 minutes without access to shelter, so keep those things in mind. Now, if you're going to take your dog for a walk, obviously, you want to be able to protect their feet. Frostbite can affect their ears, can affect their feet, obviously in very, very cold temperatures like we are expecting. So you can get booties on them, if those potentially work. Also, when you are walking them, a lot of people use salts or ice melts, things like that. You hope that everybody's using a pet-friendly one. Not everybody does. So you want to make sure that when your dog comes back in from their walk, you just wipe their paws off, with like a towel and a little bit of warm water, just to get that residue material off. Because what can happen is they can actually go ahead and lick some of that and ingest it, and that can cause some GI upset, some vomiting, diarrhea. A lot of them are Epsom salt based, and so you can get some diarrhea happening from those things. So keep those things in mind too. Also, if you happen to be in an area where there's a lot more snow falling, and your dog actually starts to get what we call these like clingy snowballs or clingy ice balls on their fur, you really want to try to get those off, because what can happen is those can wick right down onto the skin and actually cause frostbite in those areas right up against the skin. So that's another important tip. For those of you that take care of outdoor feral cat colonies, you want to make sure that the shelters that you have set up are warm and dry. Again, you don't want any kind of moisture in there if you can avoid it. Some people just open their garages a little bit this time of year just to allow them in. Cats, do usually throw a good amount of heat. They just have to be able to stay dry and protected from the elements. If you are feeding and watering them outside, remember things freeze very, very quickly in these temperatures, so you may have to bring out water multiple times or use a couple of those special outdoor designed heated water bowls just to keep things so that obviously the water doesn't freeze and, they obviously can't get to it. Now, if you are taking care of livestock, make sure that they are well protected and they have adequate bedding and shelter as well. For horses, you want to make sure that, if they are one that really doesn't tolerate the cold as well, obviously keeping them inside in a stall would be the best thing. But if you can't do that, make sure that their structures for shelter, usually a 3-sided structure is mandated, that they are sturdy, that they have enough really good supply of straw bedding, and that they are, again, protected from the elements. If you do have horses and you have automatic waterers out in your paddocks, check those regularly, because those lines can freeze and your horses obviously can suffer from lack of water and dehydration. Colic in horses is a very big concern in the cold weather because of lack of water intake and things like that. So you may be forced to bring water out to them multiple times a day, and obviously if you can bring them in, that would be the best thing for them. Final thing that I'm going to talk about real quick, which kind of sums it all together, is also remember that a lot of animals burn a lot more calories to stay warm in the winter weather and really cold temperatures. So you want to make sure that you are feeding them appropriately so that they have enough energy to burn to keep themselves warm. So you may have to increase their feed amounts a little bit during the really cold months. So if you have any other questions and you are concerned about potential cold exposure in your pet, contact your local veterinarian. If you notice any potential signs of hypothermia starting in your pet, such as uncontrollable shivering, them appearing a little bit more kind of listless, lethargic, a little disorientated, things like that, contact your veterinarian immediately, as they will need care. So this is Dr. Bryan Langlois of the Pet Pantry of Lancaster County and the current president of the Pennsylvania Veterinary Medical Association. I'm currently frozen to the ground, so I may be here next time for your next pet health tip, but hope everybody stays warm and dry and prevents any unnecessary cold-related issues happening in your pet. We'll see you next time.